Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fired Up, the podcast for marketers working in early and late stage startups. I'm Morgan McClintock, the CEO of startup marketing agency Firebrand. We've launched this podcast to interview the best in the business, but I'm not going to do it alone. So please meet my co-hosts.
I'm Nicole Pytel, Firebrand's VP of Content Marketing.
And I'm Chris Ulbrich, Firebrand's Head of Media Relations.
I'm Ian Lipner, a tech PR and crisis communications veteran.
We'll drop a new episode each week, so there's plenty of fuel for your marketing fire. Get the spark you need to take your startup to a whole new level. Hi, everybody. We are back. My name is Morgan McClintock, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Nicole Pytel.
Hey, Morgan. Hey, everybody. This is such an exciting episode for us because all of our Fired Up listeners, you're getting the very first taste of something very, very big that we're working on. You're the first to know about it. We're going to dig into it. Morgan, why don't you tell the folks what we've been up to for the past couple of weeks?
So we have been doing some research asking 250 startup marketers all about how they see the market, how confident they feel about hitting their targets, what challenges they have, and we're compiling it into a report, the Startup Marketing Outlook, which we'll be publishing later this month. But we thought today we'd give you a little sneak preview of some of the highlights, and then we'll sort of jump into the impact of that. I want to specifically talk about what's going on in SEO. I want to talk a little bit about email, organic social, some of the challenges that we can see, because it's been exciting few weeks in startup marketing. But as marketers, we see our world, like the challenges that we're facing, but are those unique to us? What are other people doing? We all want to learn from each other. And so we thought, let's take a step back. Let's do a quick survey of what everybody's feeling and then pull it together and share it out with you. So we're going to talk through a couple of highlights from that survey today. What's the sort of key first one that we found?
Some good news from Startup Land is that the majority of tech startup marketers that we interviewed are actually ahead of their 2024 growth targets. So definitely not all doom and gloom, which was a lovely little surprise, at least for me. I wouldn't have expected it to be quite so high.
Yeah, something like 59% are ahead of their growth targets. And early stage companies are slightly ahead of than late stage. But I thought that was great because we know it's been tough. We know budgets have been compressed. If you just talk to people, everyone's finding it hard. But actually, behind the scenes, people are ahead of their targets. So we're actually doing well. And most companies feel like by the end of the year, they're going to hit their targets substantially. So I thought that most companies would be behind their targets, but, 22% are on target and only 17% say that they're behind target. And underlying that optimism, 28% of startup marketers said that they're actively focused on building their profile ahead of an IPO. So I think in general, people are feeling pretty upbeat and being confident in hitting their numbers this year.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a big finding, was so much confidence and optimism, which, if you listen to kind of the drumbeat of the news cycle, you probably wouldn't expect that. So it's great to hear that. A bit surprising, but a lovely surprise as well.
Yeah. And look, where's that? I've said it's slightly earlier stage compared to late stage, although they're broadly similar. But in terms of sectors, in enterprise software, 57% of people are ahead of target. Cybersecurity, 54%. And actually, it's AI, 39%. that are sort of behind. That might surprise you. Maybe there's just sort of elevated expectations in terms of the targets, the amount of money these companies have raised. So that might account for that. But enterprise, cybersecurity, those sectors are doing really well. But they're also really focused on efficiency. So, two of the top three goals for the people that we surveyed, 250 of them, are improving marketing efficiency and reducing customer acquisition costs. And it's that customer acquisition piece that's really proving to be a bit of a challenge.
It's tough. It's tough out there. And customer acquisition, especially in the B2B world, has never been easy. It's never been cheap. But from what we're hearing from this data, it's as hard as it's ever been. if not harder. And at a time when everybody's being asked to do more with less, I know we hear that all the time, but it's the truth. Having it be harder and more expensive is just a giant, giant challenge that startup marketers have to overcome.
Right. So where is that efficiency driver coming from? It's coming from investors. 22% of VCs are encouraging more efficiency. 21% are advising spend reduction. Only 15% are suggesting that they increase their spend. So if you feel like you're having to do more with less, you're not alone there. But how confident are these teams that they can get more with less? In fact, most marketing departments rate among their lowest abilities that they can make accurate data-led decisions. And they also feel that they probably can't improve their marketing efficiency much more. So we might be reaching the end of the juice to be squeezed out of that.
Yeah, agreed. We talk about data-driven decisions all of the time. The data tells a story. We're always telling our clients that, but it's hard to collect data and interpret it and have all the right data. And maybe you don't have attribution, or maybe your paid isn't quite as optimized as it could be. There's so many data points to collect and look at and analyze. And it's hard. It's hard to keep up with all of it. It's hard to really totally understand what the data is telling you, and then to go off and make a decision that you feel confident about. It's hard to do. So not a giant surprise that those were two of the top goals, because I think it fits in with what we're seeing in startup world right about now.
And so we're trying to reduce customer acquisition costs. That's one of the key priorities. But buyers are changing. We know that buyer behavior is changing, and it's difficult to kind of see into that buyer behavior. We just talked with Josh Gross last week about the whole dark funnel and how to sort of shed some light on that. But one of the top changes that buyers are seeing is that they're seeking shorter contracts. 28% of marketers are seeing that more frequently than they did in prior years. So it's not universal, but 28% of people are bumping into that problem. And a similar number, 28%, are seeing customers be more reticent about being willing to be a reference. So getting those customer references, if it feels like it's getting harder, it's because it is. And almost a third of people are finding that the same. And 25% of startups have said that they are finding that the buyer process is suddenly disrupted by the arrival of a new decision maker into the process. And so, you can imagine getting close to closing the deal, and then suddenly a new group, it might be IT, it might be finance, it might be another senior decision maker, sort of pops up that you weren't aware of and slows the process down. And that's happening more than it has in prior years. And, that makes good sense to me. As budgets are, there's more scrutiny over budgets. I can imagine there's just building more consensus that takes more time, and people want to sort of make sure that they get in on that decision and make sure that it's the right one.
Yeah, I don't think any of that is shocking. I think it's important to point out and give it a minute of thought, because I think right now, startup marketers, especially marketers everywhere, but especially at startups, are being asked to do so much, and the bar is so high, and the resources, there's never enough, there's fewer now. And it's very easy to kind of be in your own little rabbit hole and forget that your buyers have a lot of the same problems that you do. They don't have as much money as they did a year or two ago. They're being squeezed to do more with less. They've got turnover and new people coming in, and maybe a new boss they have to justify their decisions to. So I think this is a really good chance to take a minute and kind of put ourselves in the buyer's shoes and say, okay, this is what they're going through as well. And our marketing really needs to adapt as a result of that. There's a lot we can learn from just those couple of little data nuggets right there.
Right. So this report is coming out later this month, and it has a ton of more data in there. And we'll maybe go through some of that nearer the time. But I do want to talk about, we talked about, hey, we need to be more efficient against a backdrop of changing practices here. So, for example, in the SEO world has been rocked this last couple of weeks by the launch of AI overviews. And let's just touch on that. So for those that have missed it, the AI overviews are the sort of part of search generative experience that Google has been rolling out. They've done the broad launch of AI overviews just at Google I/O, and it's the little summary that you might see above your search results where Gemini summarizes what it's found and might answer your question there on the search engine results page, which means that there's no click through to the content publisher. And publishers themselves have been dreading this for a long time because obviously they derive their revenue from the ads that you serve. And if people are not visiting the site, that's not good. And content marketers have been dreading it too because we rely on organic traffic to come to our sites to convert it. And that's one of the reasons why we're publishing so much content. But if Gemini is just sort of slurping it all up and answering the questions there on the page, there's less site traffic. And organic traffic is normally one of the top traffic sources. And so this is potential to be pretty big. You probably saw some of the errors that have come out, being advised to eat at least one rock a day and stick your cheese to your pizza using non-toxic glue. Those two stories the non-toxic glue came from Reddit. It was just someone shitposting on Reddit and it got slurped into Gemini as a result. And the other one about eating rocks was actually from The Onion, which is obviously a satirical site.
Which is my dieting Bible. So, I mean, I go to The Onion for all of my dieting advice. It's bathing suit season. What do you want?
That's right. And rocks are full of minerals. And so why shouldn't we eat them? You know, you can see one for one where the AI overview output comes from this article. And for me, that was what was important because The Onion is obviously a publisher and wants people to come to its website. And in this instance, it's a ridiculous answer, but, you know, it shows that the publisher was not getting the click because the rock eating advice was given directly to it. So anyway, what does this mean for our brands and our SEO? Like Google is going to control the rollout of AI overviews. And I think they've pulled it back a little bit as a result of some of these sort of far end kind of searches. These are at the broad ends of it. You know, most people are searching on, you know, what time is the Super Bowl? And of course, that's going to just be answered in a rich snippet AI overview anyway. But we know it's going to happen. What can we do? What does that mean for our SEO program?
Part of it is we kind of have to see how this rolls out. I mean, do we know exactly what's going to happen and how to adjust from it right now? Not so much. We have a good guess. And Alistair Nee, who leads our digital team, his team has been on this for months because we've got clients asking, you know, it's been this other shoe that's been waiting to drop for so long of like, what happens when this rolls out? What happens when zero-click answers become a thing? And, you know, I was thrilled when Alistair put together a blog post a few weeks ago of really like, what is the effect going to be? What do you need to do? What are some optimizations that you can do right now? And I appreciated it because as a layperson, it really made sense to me as to why this is happening, what Google still wants to see, what you can still do. And really, I think the main point that I took from it was that, you know, all is not lost here. This is just a change. We've gone through plenty of Google algorithm changes before. This just happens to be a bigger, more buzzworthy one. But we're going to keep an eye on it. We've got some initial optimizations that we've told our clients to start making, but SEO is not dead by any stretch. So if anybody is afraid of that, that is just absolutely not the case. It's just a little bit different. And it's really a matter of now there's just this thought of optimizing for the AI overview. I mean, it's really no different than some of the rich snippets in a way. So it's not all Chicken Little sky is falling. There's a lot that can be done. And really sometimes just sticking with the fundamentals and going deep into topics and really deriving your expertise and writing in a particular way that an overview may be drawn to, because we're seeing the kinds of, you know, rocks excluded. We're seeing the kind of answers it's giving. So we can incorporate that into our SEO content. So definitely some good advice there and some silver linings as well. All is not lost.
And so those fundamentals are like just focusing on Google's EAT acronym experience. Like, does your content show that you've done this yourself? Expertise. Does the content author, the actual named author of the blog post or whatever show a history of skills and expertise in this. So the author becomes more important in that. Is it trustworthy? Is it accurate? Is it attributed? Is it sourced? And then does your site have authority, right? You mainly talking about this topic, or you normally talk about something else, you're going to have more authority around that topic. Those fundamentals are still going to be in place. And, we will see the citations, the AI overviews eventually adds in. We'll see how Google incorporates paid into AI overviews as well. They have said, let Google do the Googling for you, which is sort of a bit terrifying for publishers. Their premise is people will do multiple searches using the AI overview to refine exactly what they need and then click on one of the blue links. So what you may see is a lower volume of traffic, organic traffic coming to the site, but it's the low quality visitors that are removed and the high intent users are still coming, and you might still see good engaged sessions. You might still see a reasonable number of conversions from organic, and it might just sort of cut the bottom off that. That's the hope, but it's too early to see in the data. Yeah, we're just doing all our reports at the moment. It's too early to see any impact of that.
It is too early, but that is a great point. If you really care about a topic or you really have a question or you really need to dig into something, the AI overview is not going to be enough. You're going to have to visit the site. So I agree. I think this could actually lead to maybe less traffic overall, but better traffic. And so I think that's why it's so important. Keep an eye on your Google Analytics. Are your engaged sessions going up? Is time on site going up? Is bounce rate going down? Those are all still very important things. Even if the sample size is a little bit smaller, that could essentially be a good thing because that could be traffic that wasn't going to do business with you in the first place.
That's right. I mean, we do know, though, obviously the traffic that comes, you've got to convert it. So to your point, looking at the heat maps, looking at the behavioral path through the site, looking at your CRO metrics are going to be important because, even if we're getting a lower volume of traffic, we've got to make sure that we give people a great user experience. And so now's the time to kind of get all that metrication put in and get that site really humming along in terms of performance. Let's talk a bit about organic social, which has also been impacted. You flagged earlier that Twitter's usage has been going down.
Yes, we did see a survey that says, over the past year, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, usage has gone down 30%. And I think it's just, yes, there's things with X, but I think the bigger point here is organic social is getting harder to cut through the noise, whether it's less people using it or if you go over onto LinkedIn, LinkedIn is increasingly becoming pay to play. They just rolled out not too long ago much smaller images that are getting pulled in. If you put a third-party link into your post, it used to be this beautiful featured image that would stop people in their tracks in their newsfeed. And now, they're moving to these little tiny things because they want to keep people on site. And also, the algorithm is showing organic content less and less and less. And we're seeing results with clients where even just $500 to boost a post for something that's important to them. Maybe it's a webinar, maybe it's a new gated asset, whatever it is, whether it's to their followers or not, is making a big difference because LinkedIn is a business. They want money. And so I think there's just this general trend that organic social is not what it used to be. And when you look back at our research, okay, well, folks need to do more with less. They've got to get these acquisition costs down. That's not what they want to hear. They don't want to hear that organic search is getting harder with AI overviews. They don't want to hear that organic social is getting harder, but these are the facts. And we've got to figure out ways to get around them, which we're starting to do for some of our clients.
It's understandable that LinkedIn, it's a commercial business. They need to monetize, right? And so if you click on a link and go off, if people share a link and then they go off somewhere else, you might never come back, right? Because you're off and you're searching somewhere else. I think it's subtler, but they've made those images smaller when, it pulls the featured image from your link into your post, but it's a lot smaller now. And so you have to, to compensate, you have to then manually upload the image or a different image. And we saw a little bit about people doing no link posts to see how that performed and then sort of putting the link in the comments. I've tried it myself as well. You probably have too. I don't think it makes much difference. And it's just not a great user experience to kind of bury the link down in the comments. And it seems such a sort of silly hack that I can't imagine that that's going to work for a long time, even if it did in the early days.
I don't think so. LinkedIn's full of very smart people. They're going to figure out, if the first comment in every post happens to be a link, they'll figure out a way to devalue that as well. I mean, and you're right. They're a business. I mean, you can't blame them, but it is what it is. And we've even seen with clients, kind of having to optimize those featured images a little bit. You could before maybe have like a really cool headline, embedded on your image that may not get read now. It may just be too small. So definitely even just some little tweaks along the way, just because of these changes. It's just, we just got to keep moving forward because everything's just changing.
Yeah. So, video works a lot better on LinkedIn. You would see, as we have for our podcast, right? The videograms work really well, but little short videos, it provides a transcript if you don't already do those yourselves. Those are ones which kind of get a little bit more stop and look time organically. And your earlier point, do think about for your key posts around maybe it's linking to a key piece of content, boosting that, amplifying that, and targeting your own followers. Because something like 9 or 10% of your followers see any given post. So the rest of them are not even seeing it. And you may assume, hey, look, I have 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, but you're not getting 20,000 impressions from every post. You're getting a fraction of that. So for a small amount, having created the content for a small amount to try and just make sure that, even the people that follow you and want to see your content because they've opted in, you have to even pay to get them to see it. This is the direction of travel. You can do a lot with the LinkedIn paid, which we'll talk about another time, but this is where it's going. And on the topic of paid, let's just talk about lead quality and things that you can do around that. Because we do see pushback about paid media that, the leads you get, they're just junk, right? They're just not good enough. And they're fake form fills or they're bots or they're off target. And, you're clogging up your BDRs with things that are not in the right target. What should companies be doing there, Nicole?
I'm not even sure any of this advice is particularly new and fresh. I think it's just getting put under a microscope because of what we're seeing with budgets either being decreased or at least staying the same. Every single dollar that's getting spent is really, really being looked at. And so for a lot of startups, every single lead that comes in through paid is really put through the microscope. Well, is this right? Do they have the right revenue? Do they have the right employee headcount? Like all of these things that may not have been looked at quite so carefully in years past are now. So what do? I mean, it's very simple. Who are you talking to? Is it the right audience? What is your message? What value proposition are you trying to convey? What is the feature or the benefit of them clicking on your ad, visiting your website, filling out your LinkedIn lead gen form, all of those things? And then sales and marketing have to be on the same page. If sales says, hey, our ideal customer is this, and marketing thinks their ideal customer is that over there, sales will never be happy with the leads that marketing generates. Marketing may think they're the greatest leads in the world, but if sales says this is not who we're after, these are not sales qualified leads, something has to change. And so it sounds so simple, but start with a conversation. Sit down, sales and marketing, bring them all together and say, okay, who do we need to be talking to? And also, sales team, what's resonating? What conversations are you having? What objections are you hearing? What questions are you getting? What can we do in some of our ads? If there is like a specific value that folks are looking for that you're hearing in your conversations, our ads should be targeting that because that's what the market is looking for. So many times a simple conversation can figure out some of the value propositions, some of the targeting, and, just better leads overall. You do not have to pay for junk leads. You should not pay for junk leads. So tighten everything up, see where things aren't quite hitting the mark, whether it's just the wrong people or they're not converting, figure out where the gap is. And there are ways to optimize that 100%. And they're not super hard.
Right. It does take some optimization and to sort of dial in every campaign. And you need a portfolio of different content assets at different parts of the funnel and all your different audiences to kind of find that sweet spot between the messages. So it's not going to out the gate be great. But I do think when I hear about, oh, the leads are not good enough quality, sometimes it's something fairly basic. Like the company's not nurturing those leads. Like they're just getting handed straight to sales. And it's not that the lead isn't good. It's just the lead is not ready. It's literally a lead. It's not an MQL yet. And they're just in an earlier stage in their buying cycle, right? And so you've got to nurture them. We've talked about that a lot on this show. It could be also leads are different, right? Somebody who converts on the contact us or book a demo is very different than someone who MQLs as a result of following a lead scoring model, right? Because they've downloaded a certain number of ebooks and they've come to a webinar and they've followed you on social and they've opened so many emails or whatever your model incorporates. That person behaviorally has sort of shown a lot of signal, but then you can't treat them in the same way as you treat someone who's asked for a demo of the product, right? You can't just suddenly launch straight in when you get on the phone to that person and launch straight into the demo as if they wanted that. They may still be in an earlier stage of discovery, right? And it's just that we've indicated through our model that they're ready to talk. And they might be, but they might just have a different set of questions. So content-fueled leads should be handled and treated differently than demo leads. But if you treat them like a demo lead, of course they're going to kind of like, oh, the person wasn't ready for a demo. Well, no, of course they weren't.
Of course they weren't. And that's where remarketing can come into play. If you've got somebody like, to your point, Morgan, who's downloaded a few different content assets, they've been on the site, they're aware of your brand, they may still be getting ready because we know that B2B buyers are doing so much due diligence. We have so much data that tells us that. Our own data tells us they're being more careful. So remarketing can be a much more efficient way, faster and more cost effective to get those leads to convert, because you're not trying to convert a cold audience. You've got folks that are warm to some degree and you're trying to get them over the finish line. And I think remarketing is a side of paid that a lot of people tend to maybe overlook because they're so obsessed with getting in like that big kettle of net new fish. It's like you've got fish swimming in your own pond that are ripe. So go after them.
Yeah, and you've got to build those audiences up and you've got to kind of, make sure they're populated because there's all sorts of privacy things. But yeah, absolutely. Now, you also published a post recently, actually, about the impact of Gemini, which is Google's AI model, on Gmail. And this was new to me. I mean, I'm aware that, they have Gemini across the whole of the workspaces, but specifically when it comes to email marketing, we've been worrying about the impact of Gemini on our organic search. And here it is, whilst we're looking the other way, is it eating our email channel as well? Talk to me a bit about that.
So Gemini and Gmail, it's going to be widely rolled out throughout the course of June. So again, similar to the AI overviews, time will tell. I think unlike the AI overviews where we already have SEO fundamentals, we don't really have any kind of optimization fundamentals for email. It's always been this lovely place where you can go and send an email to your database anytime you want to. And Google has had no say in who sees it or what they do with it. And it's just been like this lovely little vacuum. Well, Gemini and Gmail, it's very interesting because it can do a lot of things. The biggest thing from a marketing perspective, in my opinion, is its ability to summarize emails and attachments to emails. And so that makes me wonder, oh my gosh, you have this overflowing inbox. Are you just going to tell Gemini, hey, summarize this email for me? And that email that I put so much effort into and crafting the right CTA and having everything above the fold and having a great headline and all of those things, how is Gemini going to interpret that? We're kind of playing telephone with the message here. And so it's something that marketers have to consider. And that's why, I wanted to get a post out there now. Like, this is rolling out as we speak. Here are some things that you should be doing right now, because we kind of do need a little bit more data to see what are those summaries going to look like. We've seen Google demos, but we haven't seen them in the wild yet. So there's still a bit to learn, but stuff that you can definitely do. And is it going to turn into almost like a SEO style of writing an email so that you have to optimize for Gemini? I mean, it could be, we don't know. Or it could turn out to be nothing. I mean, if Gemini keeps telling people to eat rocks, like, you may not trust it to summarize your emails. We'll see if the market even adapts to it, because we've seen, Gmail users before, from an ads perspective, saying to Google, keep your hands off my inbox. I don't want you in there. I don't want you filtering based on, me sending out wedding invitations, sending me wedding ads, So it may be something, maybe Gmail users don't want it, but we have to plan as if people are going to use it. And since Gmail has so much market share, so much of your database is using it, you have to know about this update and you have to start taking some steps now. And nothing is earth shattering. Just take some few steps, if nothing else, to have an email that somebody doesn't want to summarize. If it's short and it's compelling and it's to the point, there's a very clear call to action, it's interesting, it's insightful, they'll go summarize something else and they'll read your content. But definitely something to keep in mind.
Right. An extra barrier there. And of course, you can segment your database. If this does become an issue, you could see segmenting your email database between people who use the Gmail client and everybody else, because, you've got to try and climb out of that. You've got that extra sort of filter in front that Gemini's either summarizing your email or ignoring it on behalf of the user, whereas you don't have that barrier with other email clients. Maybe that's how we'll approach it.
Maybe. And I think right now, keep your eye on the data. Go into your CRM and look at your previous sends, see how they performed with Gmail users. And then as you start to send more this month and into the summer, see what's happening with those Gmail users. If you see opens going down or you see clicks going down, it could be Gemini and Gmail, especially if your other email clients are holding rock steady. It could be that. So, of course, let the data tell the story and see what's happening in your specific database.
One of the big trends that we're seeing right now is obviously ABM. And we've talked about how to implement that on this show before. In an upcoming episode, we have one about how to build the stack without using an ABM platform like Demandbase or 6sense. So I think on this topic, if you're not already doing it, let's pull together that target list, work with sales to kind of get there. Let's start using that to target our ads in LinkedIn. Maybe we can even explore doing some, a lot of these platforms like 6sense and Demandbase have their own ad networks. You don't have to buy the rest of it. You just run intent-based ads or targeted ads on their network. Start moving towards an ABM motion. So you're not just boiling the whole vertical sector. You're actually targeting particular companies. And this can be an incremental process, but we're leading almost all of our clients through this right now. So I think as a trend that this is really big. And because we do a lot of work in PR as well, we have this concept around account-based PR where we see you should align your PR efforts with your ABM efforts so that you're sort of surrounding that target account list with messages and they sort of see you everywhere. And of course, it makes perfect sense. I mean, let's be clear. PR is pretty broad-based, right? You're raising awareness with everybody who reads a particular publication or goes to a show or looks at an award or what have you. But you can look at your target account list. You can see those people within that list. What are the publications that they share? What are they reading? Like, what are the issues? Let's look at the intent data. What are people searching on? That shows that they're interested in that topic. How do we take that intent data and then sort of mirror it into our marketing, our PR program, so that we are talking about that in our PR program as well? So what does that mean? Okay, maybe that means a byline or a thought leadership piece in that particular outlet about those topics that you've seen in the intent data. Maybe you look and you see someone speaks at a particular event, who's a key in the buying decision. So, hey, let's make sure that we're either sponsoring that event or we too are talking there so we can meet in the green room. Let's make sure that we're researching our target list and feeding that information in terms of people and outlets and events and awards that these companies value into our PR program. And then you're really sort of surround sounding your prospects and being more targeted in your PR efforts.
It goes back to being efficient and doing more with less. You don't need a giant, let's target everybody PR approach, just like you don't need on the digital side. And A/B PR to me is so incredibly obvious, and yet nobody's really talking about it, but it's such a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a big trend, sort of following behind account-based marketing. Let's talk about customer advocacy. One of the data points in the Startup Marketers Outlook survey was that 28% of respondents said that they were finding customer references to be harder. We're seeing clients ask for more of these sort of case studies, but asking for a case study is big. It incurs some reputational risk on behalf of the customer. So how do we go about that? And what trends are we seeing when it comes to customer advocacy?
That stat intrigued me out of our data because we're seeing clients doing the opposite. They're really, really pushing. And it makes sense. We can talk all day long about how great we are, but a customer testimonial or a case study, that's us walking the walk. That's the customer saying, here's what they did for me. Here's the impact that they made for me. That's worth its weight in gold. So it's not surprising at all that our clients are trying to do more and more of that. In fact, a couple of our content clients, almost half of our remit is just devoted to case studies. And, I think the key is to make it simple for the client. Say, I'm going to take 30 minutes of your time. Here are the questions in advance that I want to ask you. If they want to do it on video, that's great. We've got a lot of interest in folks that can do that. It doesn't have to be this expensive in-person shoot. There are ways to shoot things remotely that are far less expensive, but the quality is so much better. It is not like your typical quirky Zoom video. It looks like it was done in person. And so there are ways to do this, but I think the key is, okay, client, we're thrilled that you've had these results. Can we take 30 minutes? Or talk to your sales team and say, who would be a great case study? Write it up and then just give it to them for approval and say, can you take 10 minutes to read this? Are you okay with this? And if all else fails, you can always anonymize case studies. If the story is good enough, get it out there. Ideally, yes, you want a customer logo on there. You want a testimonial. You want a headshot of somebody who will vouch for you. But that's not always the case. So don't shelve a good story just because maybe the customer isn't on board. You can still tell that story without saying who it is.
Yeah. And, first half of the year, there's a lot of company kickoffs and a lot of customer events for different vendors. And this is a huge unlock for customer advocacy because, hey, you just get your customer to come along and talk and it's on video and it's a great chance to then pull them aside and ask them a few questions and sort of get some extra video content that you can then use on your site and social. And look, there's nothing new in this, but it's all about execution and just sort of making it work. And so we see this a lot. Even with virtual events, we see companies make sure that they're repurposing those talks, chopping them up and using them elsewhere in their customer advocacy programs. So I do think this is a challenge. You just got to allocate some budget to it. I love the remote customer videos. I think the way they do that sort of send almost like this briefcase kind of video unit, which has a remote control camera on the end. And you sort of ship this to your customer and they sort of put it on the table and then you have someone call and say, and it's got some lights and things in it and they can control it remotely so that you can frame the shot and you can light it properly and you can guide the customer through it as if they had a studio. But, you don't have to fly there yourself or fly, a videographer out. But it still looks a lot better than the classic Zoom call because I think you do want those to, if you've got the chance, you do want them to look good. So this is a good combination of the two, and it's kind of fun.
It's a great middle ground. Yeah, it's fantastic. And we're seeing it more and more, and we're seeing clients really go, oh, I can really do that. I don't need a giant video marketing budget. Like, no, you don't. So it's great.
Our startup marketing outlook is going to be published later this month. We interviewed 250 different startup marketers of early and late stage. There's going to be packed with all of the sort of graphs and data points there. And, part of this is just us wanting to learn from each other and to sort of share this information so we can stay on top of trends and we can feel confident about the work that we're doing. So I'll let you all know when that's coming out. But in the meantime, you can sign up. It'll be in our newsletter, The Forge. You can sign up for that on our site. You can drop us an email and we'll make sure that you get a copy of that. But we look forward to talking about that a little bit more. Nicole, thanks for your time today. Really enjoyed just getting a chance to chew on some of the latest trends in marketing. There's a lot going on, and I think it can feel pretty overwhelming for people. And so, we wanted to just take this moment to share some of the data, but also talk through the kind of trends that we're seeing. So thanks for your time. I enjoyed that a lot.
Thanks for having me. Always great to be here.
All right, folks, that's it for today. We will talk to you soon. Well, that about wraps it up for today. But before we close, we did want to offer all of our Fired Up friends a chance to grab a mega pack of all of our ebooks and guides. That's our guide to content marketing. That's our startup guide to paid media using Google Ads. It's our guide to attribution. You can get all of those, over 100 pages of goodness, at firebrand.marketing/fired up freebies. That's freebies with an S. And we hope you enjoyed the show. And if you did, please give us a rating wherever you get your podcasts or drop us a note at firebrand.marketing. And as ever, the details of how to get in touch with our guest today can be found in the show notes. Thank you for listening. And until next week, get out there and crush your marketing goals.